Welcome to another edition of Green Beauty Intel. Today we're talking research studies. Now, if you've been paying attention to the beauty industry, you'll notice that a current trend, that the current leading influencers right now are cosmetic chemists. And why is that? Well, we know that a big part of the beauty industry is claims and marketing. Good PR, good Instagram, and we're looking to cosmetic chemists to give us a little bit of insight on what products are worth the money, how to layer products, what ingredients are actually penetrating the skin, what's worth paying over $100 for, how ingredients work on a cellular level. So as that thirst for knowledge has bloomed in the beauty industry, we start seeing a lot of people talking about science, myself included. And that's great, but on the same hand, one of the things that bothers me a lot about green beauty is how frequently information is taken out of context. Context, if you didn't know it, when it comes to research studies is actually quite important. It's very easy to copy and paste a line from a scientific study that supports what you want to say. However, sometimes they're making an inference that's not really there. So I thought what might be nice for today is we'll talk about the concept of context, and then we'll actually look at a research study and we'll go through it step by step, and I'll tell you some of the important things that I look for when I'm evaluating scientific studies. Because the truth of the matter is, science is about observation, and the environment that the observation occurs in is extremely important to understanding the results. Okay, so let's jump in. You know that I just did a video on phenoxyethanol. Now, if you were to start researching phenoxyethanol or the dangers of phenoxyethanol, or is phenoxyethanol a neurotoxin, you would probably see in the first page of Google somebody mentioning Mommy's Bliss nipple cream. That's right, I said nipple cream. I've always wanted to say nipple cream in a video. Not really. Now, Mommy's Bliss nipple cream and phenoxyethanol, if you spent any amount of time, you can go through the first 5 pages of Google seeing people mentioning, cutting and pasting from an FDA warning, hyperlinking to an FDA warning. And what you'll see repeated over and over is that in the FDA warning, they say that phenoxyethanol can depress the central nervous system of infants. Now, that sounds pretty scary, right? Let's put it in context. Okay, so you go through the first 5 pages of Google. You try to click on the link to the FDA to read the warning yourself. Alas, you cannot, because it no longer exists on the FDA site, even in their archives. Now, the FDA warning I'm talking about is from 2008. When the FDA sent out a warning saying that Mommy's Bliss nipple cream had some serious safety issues. Now, if you're wondering how I can put this in context, well, there's a scientific blog many Google pages deep that actually screenshot it and posted the entire thing on his blog. Epic, awesome, I love a scientist. Now, what does it say? It says, indeed, that phenoxyethanol was used as a preservative in Mommy's Bliss nipple cream, and that it can depress the central nervous system. However, what very few other blogs fail to mention is that it also contained an ingredient called chlorphenicin, and that this ingredient relaxes skeletal muscles as well as depressing the central nervous system. That can cause respiratory depression. Information that's useful when you're interpreting this FDA warning. Now, the plot thickens. In the directions on Mommy's Bliss nipple cream, it says that you do not need to remove the nipple cream prior to nursing. If you are a mother and you have nursed a baby, warning bells should go off in your mind. Your baby should not be ingesting nipple cream. In fact, if you made a homemade nipple cream with just butters and essential oils, you should pause an alarm if your child were to ingest that. information that's useful when interpreting this FDA warning. Now, the plot thickens even further. At the bottom of the FDA warning, it says, and I'll read it to you, direct quote. And of course, I'm linking it below so that you can read it yourself from this blog. Though the FDA has not received any reports of injuries to infants, the agency is alerting the public because of the potential harm this product can have on a child. Now, when you put all of that information in its appropriate context, for one, it's not as scary, and for two, it gives you pause to think about why is it no longer listed on the FDA archives? Why can you no longer find this warning? Was it because there's question marks regarding this warning? Yes, there probably are. Maybe in the way that they did the study, maybe in the way that they released the warning. I don't know. However, Mommy's Bliss nipple cream is no longer sold. You see how you can take a bit of information and turn it into whatever you want without really giving the big picture? Okay, I'm not sure what the lighting's gonna do, but I've moved over and we're going on to the research study. So the study I want to talk about is actually from a Green Beauty website. It's called Effectiveness of Topical Chia Seed Oil on Pruritus of End-Stage Renal Disease Patients and Healthy Volunteers. Now, if you didn't know, pruritus is actually the medical term for itching. And they also use the medical term xerotic or xerosis, probably not pronouncing it right, this is how it's spelled, and that means abnormally dry skin. Now, if you click on the hyperlink over to this article, it's on PubMed, so you'll see the abstract, which tells you the background, the objective, the methods, the results, and conclusion. Now, the cool thing about this article is that you can actually read the whole entire article. A lot of times you only have access to the abstract. And as much as I like reading abstracts, I don't think that they're enough information, and that to truly understand a research study, you have to be able to read the entire thing. So I have a subscription to a journal article site that allows you to read a lot of these, but that's a big red flag for me when I see people citing abstracts without explaining that they've read the entire article. So what's nice too is that you can also download the PDF of this so you can read through it at your leisure and look at all the details in detail. All right, so the first thing I look at when I'm looking at a research study is where was it published? Was it published in a reputable journal that professionals are subscribing to? Number two, I look at when it was published. Was it published in 1982 or 2010? This article that we're looking at is from 2010. But when you really think about it, even now, that's 8 years ago. So there could be more in-depth information beyond just what we knew in 2010. And let's go on to the introduction. Now, what I like about reading the introductions in depth from the beginning is that they give you a little bit of information about why they're doing this study, as well as information about maybe the skin conditions and also some of the cellular mechanics about how some of these ingredients are working or absorbing. So in this particular article, they're telling us that diabetic patients and patients that have end-stage renal disease, meaning they're on dialysis, have a really high prevalence for itching and abnormally dry skin. This can be problematic in their extremities and it can lead to infections. So they're telling us, and they're also adding in that itching when you're on dialysis can be an extremely uncomfortable, life-altering complication of dialysis. Then they go into a little bit about telling us about how chia seed oil works and all the benefits and history. So like I said, I really love to pour over the introduction. Then they go on to the materials and methods. This is another place that I like to pour over because they are telling us where the study was done, how many people were involved in the study, when the study was done. So was the study done 10 years ago and they're just now publishing their study? So in this particular study, they're telling us that they had 5 patients that basically had an illness. 3 had diabetes and 2 were on dialysis. And then they chose 5 healthy volunteers who also had itching and dry skin. They give us lots of more information too. They tell us more about, their medical conditions, and they tell us about the ages and genders, but we're not just gonna keep moving. So then they tell us about the study design, okay? And this is also a very important part about the study, is how, especially when you're talking about skincare, is how were these ingredients prepared? So in this one, they took a basic moisturizer and they called it an oil and water formula. And they don't tell us any more details about the moisturizer. Other than that, the one they're testing to see if chia seed oil works is a moisturizer with 4% chia seed oil. They applied it to one side of the body, basically placebo they applied to the other side. Now, one other thing that we need to know is how long did this study last and when were results or progress observed. So the study went for 8 weeks and they observed progress every 2 weeks. What's interesting about this study, and this is really what I look at a lot when you're talking about skincare, part of the way they decided whether or not the study was successful or chia seed oil was actually helpful at improving itching and dry skin was based on what's called subjective assessment, meaning did the patients say they had less itching? They also did some objective assessment, meaning they looked at transepidermal water loss, they looked at skin pH, they looked at the texture of the skin. So it was kind of a nice balance of some observation as well as subjective information from the patient. But like I said, that's an area where you can really get tripped up in some of these studies. Say you're looking at a study done by a brand and everyone that they surveyed, it was just whether or not the patient said the ingredient made them feel good. Well, then you have a little bit more doubt in your mind. You see where I'm going with that? Okay. Then here on this study, they give us the statistical analysis. Now, if you took statistics, I applaud you. I took statistics for nursing school and it made me cry. However, when you're talking about research studies, this all goes down into numbers, and then they find what's statistically significant. And they use something called a p-value to find that. Now, without us all falling asleep and me crying, let me just tell you that to sometimes manipulate what you want the results to say, you can manipulate the p-value. Okay, we won't go into it any further. So what's great about this study is they also have some bar graphs that you can check out. They have some pictures, and then they come down here into the discussion part. And in the discussion, they acknowledge that treating itching in dialysis patients has way more to do with a multitude of factors, more so than just applying a topical cream. That they did see some improvement. So they even acknowledge in the study that because some of this information was subjective, it is kind of hard to evaluate whether or not it was effective. But they did find, in conclusion, that topical chia seed oil is effective for itching and dry skin treatment and is also beneficial for skin moisturization. Now, when you read through the study, you may feel differently. You may say that 10 people weren't enough in the study. You may read through this study and find that they were very objective and they were very straightforward. That's how I find the article. I do think chia seed oil is wonderful. So I, of course, like this study because it supports what I know to be true. So anyway, just kind of a simplistic breakdown. Let me know if you have any questions, if you've ever read a scientific study. And then again, one thing I wanted to mention very here at the end, because my lighting is gone, but they'll have their references of some of the other studies that they reference. But if you've made it this far, I want to send you to something my father-in-law turned me on to. It's by the nighttime show host John Oliver, where he talks about this very topic about taking scientific information and taking it out of context, and kind of how dangerous that is in our current society, because science becomes like religion, and I'm just going to follow the scientific studies that support what I think. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye!